We began by talking about how the games will impact Italy's economy.
Is it NHL ready? Is it European League ready? Probably not, but is it just enough to allow these games to happen? Yes, but as of a couple of weeks ago, the scoreboard wasn't even installed. The locker rooms were dingy and small. This harkens back to when some of those NHL players were playing in their high school and travel games. But that's one blight on an otherwise well-organized Olympics. You mentioned the San Siro Stadium. That's been around for close to 100 years. It recently got some upgrades for the Olympics, but also for the FIFA World Cup back in 1990. So that stadium is in fine operating condition. And the Milan area, it has a lot of the infrastructure. So they did not have to build a lot of these buildings from scratch. They built the hockey arena from scratch as well as the Olympic Village. Hopefully both of those will have longer lifespans, certainly the Olympic Village for university housing for years to come, as well as for some local infrastructure for people living there as well.
Yeah, it looks wonderful, and here's hoping everything goes off perfectly. So which industries are going to benefit the most from the influx of visitors?
Yeah, this is an interesting situation because Milan already is this international hub of finance, of fashion, of luxury. So the hotels that are there, certainly the stores and the Italian brand names that so many people have come to know all across the world, that's going to even increase even more. They're expecting about 2.5 million visitors coming in, hoping to have an immediate influx of about $100 billion spent just in tourism and hotels and local spending. But what every Olympic host city hopes for is this longer tail effect where they burst onto the national stage, and then this longer tail effect of tourism. They're projecting, and this is the word projecting, and the hope is that another $1 billion or so of tourism and visitors come in over the next year or two after this.
Good stuff. And it's not necessarily cheap to get into these sports, especially the popular ones like figure skating. It's expensive. You have to have training for years and years and years, skiing, snowboarding. So how costly can all this get? And is it somewhat prohibitive for some people to attend the events?
It's twofold. One is winter sports are so much more expensive to participate in than, say, some of the summer games or some of the other sports that we've come to know. When China hosted the Winter Games, there was a huge governmental imprint in terms of teaching and subsidizing people learning not only about the sports, but also playing the sports. Not every nation is able to do that. So it is a high bar to get in, a high bar to train, and it becomes prohibitively expensive not only to participate in these events, but also to ultimately attend. You mentioned the figure skating, the hockey, the later round hockey games, the medal games, $500 to $1,000 US. Entry for the figure skating, which is always one of the most popular, starting for those early rounds at the $500 range, going up to multiple thousands of dollars. But the sport that has taken kind of the hearts of everyone every 4 years in the Olympics, curling, is one of the most affordable sports to get into. I think the opening rounds have an entry point of just $50 US to get into. So that's always one that when people turn it on, they're like, "What is this?"
Yeah.
And 45 minutes go by, and they're watching people, sweep the ice and those things clang against each other. So that's a sport that's really taken hold of a lot of people.
Yeah, those stones are actually pieces of work as well. I mean, just
absolutely
amazing. Okay, so if we look at FIFA and the World Cup in North America, there was a big blowback on the cost of those tickets. So they freed up a bunch of tickets for people who are fans of the sport who may not have a lot of money. So should events like the Olympics be more cost effective and affordable?
You would think that they would set aside some tickets just to increase the awareness of spectators, to grow the sport in that way. But ultimately, they're trying to squeeze every single dollar out of this. Think about what NBC is doing here in the States. It's not all over the air anymore. It's now on Peacock and on streaming and different other cable services. So ultimately, when we do think about these things, you mentioned FIFA, you mentioned the Olympics now. We want to think about these as the purity of sport, but it is an economic concern. These are big businesses. We're not talking about hundreds of dollars just for tickets. We're talking about billions of dollars to run these organizations. So ultimately, you're not going to see very, very many ticket prices at a very low level.
You know, I was lucky enough to be in China ahead of it hosting the 2022 Winter Games. Now, during the buildup, and I think you talked about this, there was a huge push to get its citizens to embrace winter sports. And now I go back there, everybody's skiing and snowboarding, skating, and hockey has become a lot more popular. Talk about that. How important is that to grow these sports and build this international support?
Yeah, you build that international support, but also what you may not realize is all the industry that goes around that. All of a sudden, in some of those Chinese cities, you have ski lifts, you have ski resorts and lodges and figure skating rinks. And you mentioned the hockey boom that's happening there. That's a whole big trickle down effect that goes throughout the entire country. I'm sure here in the US, when FIFA hosts the World Cup here, every single youth soccer organization is hoping for a huge influx in signups and families watching and potentially going to some of the matches. So that's really that grassroots that they're hoping for. And every year you see a nation or you see an athlete that bursts out of
Yep.
nowhere, and you hope that that nation takes up that sport or just kind of embraces it for a couple of years to grow that interest as well.